I'm Giovanni Lago from the Next Best Series podcast, and today I'm joined by one of the directors of the new Netflix limited series, Black Rabbit, Ben Semanoff. Ben, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
No, I'm very curious how you landed on Black Rabbit. I know after Ozark ended and you had years working with Jason, and of course you got an Emmy nomination for the series and well deserved. You're moving on to other series. You work on Yellow Jackets. You work on some of the Power series, which I actually am a big fan of. I'm curious what led you back to, Jason's orbit. Was he the one that came and contacted you about this? Was it actually Zach Baylin and the showrunners who brought this series to you?
It was Jason. It's interesting, the arc of our relationship, and like as you pointed out, I worked on Ozark with Jason. I actually started working with Jason years ago as a camera operator, and he was the person that sort of championed my directing career, and yeah, we sort of went our I'm sorry, somebody keeps trying to buzz me. We sort of went our separate ways, and he reached out back, I guess about 2 years ago, and said he had this project, and wanted to bring me back as a director. So it was a real honor.
Did you feel that, of course, Jason, I think, does a great job at laying the groundwork of the tone, the atmosphere of the series, the visual style. And then, speaking of Ozark, Laura comes in and also directs a couple episodes. And then Justin Crisell, who comes in to bookend the series. You're in the middle, you got these two very pivotal episodes that really set the stage for the back end of the series. Did you feel that with the way Jason set it up and your experience together, you already felt that, okay, I could just hit the ground running? Or were you more so concerned of like getting everything really setting the stage for the ending of the series?
I guess a little bit of both. I think Jason put together a really solid team of directors that I think he assembled them and chose them because they sort of got it, I guess, from the get-go, where there wasn't a lot of, I get this question frequently about, whether or not the four of us really sat around and powwowed about the visual style and the direction of things. We did not. But I think that was for the best. And I think what's interesting is when you watch the series, you'll see that it all feels very continuous in terms of tone and aesthetic. Yet if you really looked at the 4 blocks of episodes, you would see a real shift in aesthetic in a way that almost seems deliberate. And I know from the get-go, I was sort of focused on this idea that each episode should take us to a place of less and less stability. We should feel like the brothers are on more and more uneven ground as this season of episodes progresses. I'm assuming that all the directors kind of felt that was the trajectory, and they sort of played their part in that trajectory. And you see by the end with Justin's 2 episodes, the visual style has gotten, if we're on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of frenetic, it is 10, Yeah. And quite specifically, I was looking over the course of my 2 episodes to orchestrate. I guess that's probably the proper word. Orchestrate a slow rise, like I'm slowly turning up the volume on a pot, and of that visual aesthetic, so that by the end of 6, you would really feel like you had reached a more chaotic place than you were at the beginning of 5. And so I would, on a daily basis, scene by scene, and as you know, we shoot things out of order, so it's a bit of a job to sort of keep all of that in check. But scene by scene, I would, convene with the camera operators and say, 1 to 10, this is a 6. 1 to 10, this is a 3. And that would be our way of assuring that when everything was assembled, you would really feel that sort of slow burn of the aesthetic, of the chaotic, frenetic world that these two are in, and the world getting more and more chaotic and frenetic.
I think also you stepping in mid-series helps a bunch because by that time, I don't know really in the order you guys shot, but at least, with Jude and Jason, there's that already familiarity built with one another as actors. And I think especially if we could diving in, episode 5, I really appreciate how the totality of that relationship is captured because they are at the house and they'll be just bickering. And then there is a love for each other. And then also the way it ends with them arguing. I think you very much captured the totality of that relationship. So I'm curious, for episode 5 specifically, delving into encompassing the many shades of both Jake and Vincent. And what was that like, to get that both out of Jude and Jason?
No, I think you strike on something really poignant about episode 5. It really is it is in itself a really amazing arc of their relationship from the beginning, where they're sort of at odds. Jude has just walked into his apartment, it's been trashed, and Jason's off somewhere doing, or not. Let's use their character names. Jake walks into the apartment, and Vince is off doing something. Only later, Jake is to discover that he's cooking up a scheme to burn down their parents' house. Is this something that has played its has played its course throughout their lives over and over again? Probably. This is probably the nature of their relationships. They get in a little hot water. Vince comes up with a scheme. Jake is resistant.
And then comes along because he cares and loves him.
Right. Then when he comes on board, the two of them hug and kiss and sit around in the attic looking at nostalgic things, and they reminisce about the years prior, and then they have this really beautiful moment. I mean, that scene in the attic was maybe my favorite scene to shoot of the whole of the 2 episodes, because it was simple. It was these 2 master performers riffing off each other. It was a long scene, so there was a real sort of like arc that we could weave together, and a real sort of tempo and pace that could shift and change, and their postures and their attitudes to each other, both physically and emotionally, could evolve. And it goes from a place of sort of teasing and having fun with each other and reminiscing and nostalgic to like real deep issues that are, present in both their lives in the present and have been haunting them for their whole lives in terms of their father and their relationships with their father. So it's an amazing scene to watch. But more importantly, I try to remind myself all the time when I'm in it and when I'm working, like, hey, step back. Look what you're getting to do. I'm getting to sit there behind a monitor and direct these 2 masters of TV and film. And it was just such an unbelievable pleasure. But then, of course, they burn the house down, and it's exciting.
Yeah.
And wonder, are they going to get away with it? And they get away with it, and you think, well,
everything's good. And it's not.
And it's not. But again, probably a trope that has played itself out in their lives over and over and over again. And so that's what I think is so beautiful about that episode. And this particular sequence of events leads to maybe the most significant breakup of those 2 brothers that they've ever had, because they've had other fallouts, obviously, in their life. But here on the side of the road, just barely avoiding death in their boxers.
Yeah.
They let it all out. And so it's just, it was a real honor to sort of be given that episode to direct. It was awesome.
It's also interesting how you delve into the watch and also how that ties into the heist. And I would love to talk about that as a whole, because especially episode 6, you mentioned stylistically there are noticeable changes in what each of you as filmmakers do in each of the episodes. And episode 6 entirely, I'm curious from a structural standpoint, was it always written as each of these different perspectives from the original script? And then was that something that was floated to help really realize the heist as a whole and build up to that moment? Because I mean, it's what the series starts on, is this heist. People who are watching are wondering, it's going to build up. How is it going to get to that point? And not only do you set it up to that point, but you have to also set up not only Vince and Jake's perspective, but you also got Ram De Jesus' character. You got everyone else. Wes is in it, like too. It's a lot to juggle in an hour that you have to really make sure it also perfectly lands the plane. Because I feel if you don't get that well executed, especially since it's been set up so early, like it could really spell disaster for the rest of the series.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's interesting because obviously the season starts off in the present and jumps to the past, and it's a retelling up to this point. So that itself is an interesting storytelling convention. And so for 5 episodes, we're sort of waiting to find out what the answer is. And of course, although this is a show principally about Jake and Vince, there are all these little ensemble stories that are playing out. So I think it was quite interesting and smart that Zach and Kate decided to, from the get-go, this wasn't something that was discovered in post-production. From the get-go, it was written as this non-linear telling, which I think was quite smart. It allows you to really root yourself in perspective. For me, as a filmmaker, I tend to gravitate to watching shows and directing shows that are rooted in perspective. I think that's, I think that is really the most interesting way to tell story and to show story. Like from a filmmaking standpoint, it really allows you to make interesting filmmaking cinematic choices that really shift the audience into one. You're basically putting somebody in a corner and saying, stay here. This is all you get to see, because all we want you to do is connect with this character, as opposed to, well, you could be here, you could be here, you could be here, you can see this, you can see that. You have an omniscient view of this world. I think it's way more interesting to sort of put blinders on your audience and say, no, this is all you see, because this is all that character sees. And so I really gravitate to that. So it was really nice in 6, although cumbersome in the sense that you were juggling all these stories, to be able to say, no, right now it's Robin's story, right now it's Jake's story, right now it's Wes's story. And let's play with that tension of you not quite understanding how it fits with all the other stories, but also trying to keep the audience, on board with, like, where am I in time and space, and how does that connect to what I've seen in prior episodes or what I saw just previously in Jake's story. So that was cool. That was a juggling act. In my cut, there were no interstitial titles.
Oh, wow.
In the cut I delivered, and I was sort of pushing for this idea that, like, let's let the audience reposition themselves throughout the episode without telling them that we're now talking about Jake's story. And I showed it to my wife, and she hadn't seen any of the other
no context.
No context, because I just wanted to be like, hey, if you sat down and watched this, could you follow what was happening without these title cards? And she did, and I was like, oh, that's amazing. But I think, of course, along the way in post-production, the feeling might have been that people that watch TV aren't always paying attention, and maybe it'd be important to help them along a little bit. So yeah, it was an undertaking for sure. And it's interesting trying to juggle that, right? Because we shoot blocks.
Yeah.
So I'm shooting both episodes simultaneously. One's completely linear, one's completely non-linear. So that was an interesting thing too, where it was like, okay, on the same day, you might shoot something that's part of 5 that is a complete straight trajectory. You get it. And then now on the same day, everybody's trying to, wait a second, where are we in? What happened before this? What has the audience seen before this? So it was a really interesting thing to juggle.
I know you've worked on, I mentioned earlier, Power and most of those like spin-off series, and they're in New York. And, coming from Ozark is just a starkly different environment. A city that not only is just everything is constantly moving, but also in terms of creating films and television, production, whether it's taxes or whatever, just there's so many variables. And I think also that the story and the character of New York in Black Rabbit is so essential. It's probably up there along with Jake and Vincent. I'm curious, filming in the city for those 2 episodes, and especially with how much rotation those characters are going around New York. Uh, the practicality of it in terms of shooting, what were there any challenges that arose from it? Were there anything that you had to like deviate from an original plan and in turns turn down into something like better than you hoped? You're like, actually, that worked out fantastic.
That's a good question. Not in particular in terms of that sort of like, is this going to work out or not scenario, but it's an interesting question. Maybe by the end of this answer, I'll have realized there was a scenario like that. But to your point, I have worked on a whole laundry list of shows over the past 20 some years in New York City. And what's really interesting about Black Rabbit, and I live just 90 miles south and just outside Philadelphia. And
Oh,
so
okay.
New York City's always been part of my life. It took just as long to get to New York City for us as growing up as it did to get to Philadelphia. So
Yeah.
we spend time in both cities. But what's really interesting about Black Rabbit is I think all the other shows I've ever done in New York City shot New York in a way that was recognizable and for the audience that might not live in New York, right? It was like, we're going to show you New York City, but we're going to show you I don't want to say necessarily the cliche, but
Sure.
the world's view of New York City. This was a New Yorker's New York. And that is what was really interesting to me. We were shooting in places that weren't overtly New York. They were New York if you knew New York. And I really loved that. It was a love letter to the city. I think Zach and Kate, who don't live there any longer, but lived there for many years, that was, to your point, an important part of the story. And even the concept of the Black Rabbit as that sort of hip restaurant that everybody's just fighting to get a reservation at is such a New York thing. But in terms of the locations, there was probably the one that caught everybody the most off guard was the highway at the end of 5. I think, you spend a lot of time in prep. I don't think people quite know how much time is spent prepping an episode. And on this show in particular, I had actually lots and lots of prep in comparison to the normal show. And so you go with producers and cinematographers and production designers to all these different locations, you pick them out. And maybe then later you do a tech scout where the department heads of the various departments on the show get a chance to see those locations. But for the most part, the entire crew and the actors themselves rarely see them. Now, Jason and Jude are producers. They certainly could have had access to and tapped into photos and things like that of the location. But I think for both of them, it was a bit of a shock when they showed up. And, because it was written, Jake and Vince walk in their boxers along the side of the road. So that could be a deserted side of the road. It could be in a neighborhood somewhere. It could be anywhere. And so when they showed up and they were on a highway and cars are whizzing by and they're in their boxers, I think everybody sort of had to pivot a little bit. I remember even sound going like, well, how are we going to mic them? They don't have any clothes on. And so that was probably the location that caught everybody off guard. But at the same time, I think at the end of the day, boy, what a powerful sort of, not just a scene, but that location just fueled tension and immediacy, and it was a great scene. Great way to end that episode.
You mentioned you spent 20 years plus working in television. I'm curious, as Black Rabbit will eventually come out, everyone will get to see it. Do you still find yourself like work as a like filmmaker? Do you want to just keep working in television? Do you just I just love what I do. I'm glad I get to bounce around and work on these different shows and different opportunities and different locales. Do you ever think about maybe directing it like it's a series in totality? Do you ever want to go and like jump into film? Is
All the
there
time.
are you cooking up stuff right now? That's what
All the time. Yeah, I mean, what's great about the guest directing job is that you get to quickly pop into
yeah.
various shows that could be you might be able to play in different sort of sandboxes of genre, aesthetic. You learn how to quickly understand your performers, how every performer is different, so you have to sort of quickly figure out what language and what things motivate them, and how you can best support them. And all of those things, it's a great place to sort of like sharpen all of your tools.
Mhm.
Um, but yes, at the same time, I very much want to um, get get more immersed in the creative end of things, and that might be a pilot, or as you say, maybe an opportunity to direct an entire season of television or a feature. And all of those things are things that I'm trying to cook up. And every step of my way, it's been a
Yeah.
challenge to convince people to give me an opportunity. I was a camera operator for almost 20 years, and I tried for almost 5 years looking for opportunities to direct, and to convince people, like, give me a shot, give me a shot, give me a
Sure.
shot. And it takes time. And now I've fully transitioned into that career. Now I'm trying to do that next. I'm trying to jump over that next hurdle. And it's similarly, I see the same exact sort of, you know, roadblocks, obstacles, things like that present themselves, and it's possible to overcome all of them.
Mhm.
It's just a slow road. And I think Black Rabbit's going to help, because I think Black Rabbit is um it's definitely going to be one of my favorite portfolio pizzas. I was just so frustrated when we finished in uh, let's see, what year is it now? 2025. So I finished my work somewhere in August of 2024.
Mhm.
They were going to be finished in September. And I'm thinking, okay, here we go. It's going to come out in spring of 2025. And then, we're thinking the fall of 2025. I'm like, no, this has to come out. I cannot wait. This is going to be, anyway. So yeah, that's all stuff that's in the works. And I'm trying to sort of carve my way through.
Well, Ben, I think people will get a chance to find your work if they haven't already through Ozark. Like Ozark was just such a massive thing, and I'm sure people seeing Jason on like a Netflix series again, and you directing, people will watch, and it is a fun ride. And I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
Giovanni, my pleasure. I appreciate you taking the time, especially on the Saturday.
Right.